episode 9 of RPGeez. I'm your co-host Alex Pravdin, with the other co-host Death. Today we have Chris, or Optimistical. They are making a game called Flow State, and we're gonna talk about it.
Just confirming. I just am confirming your stream is up and running on both YouTube and Twitch, by the way.
Oh
so
shit!
it's working.
Awesome. Yes, Optimistical graciously spent some time to help with the setup that was very scuffed, and now is a lot better. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You're a real
That's
one.
what I'm here for.
Yes. So yeah.
Oh, I did spend like an hour doing that, but it's no big deal.
Okay. So let's get into it.
Sure.
Cool.
Do you want to pick a topic, or do you want to just ask questions?
Just shoot me questions.
Okay.
Let's start with my favorite one, most hated role in a TTRPG.
That's going to be a pretty hard one for me because I played a lot of TTRPGs as part of my background. I've been doing them for about 7 years, but I've been pretty intensively playing as many as I can. I think I have to say my least favorite system within a TTRPG is... It's not like something that's just a rule that you can see on the plain paper that just is a sentence, right? It's more so a mechanic that ends up displaying in certain games over a period of time. And what it is this. Say you have a dice roll system that uses a d20, like D&D, and then you had a modifier to it. Whatever that modifier is, as long as it doesn't go above a certain value, it's fine. But once it does, it starts making rolls without a modifier obsolete. An example is, I make an attack roll against you. It's a d20, and I add a plus 25 to it. This means unless you add a plus 5 or less, or more to your roll, you won't be able to beat that roll for any means. There are a lot of game systems that use this. AC and D&D can be easily compared to if you just have, like, if you have a d20 plus 20, that means something with an AC of 6 or less, which is obviously pretty low. But this system crops up more in a lot of other systems as you get higher in level, or as you fight things at a low level that are much higher level than you. It creates this system where it's now completely unwinnable. And the reason I dislike it so much is thematically, to me, I like this image of 100 soldiers that are basically just peasants equipped with pitchforks, poking at the ankle of a demigod that is the size of the city. In most other systems, they would be missing over and over or doing no damage. But in my system, and the way I like to see it, is they would do a tiny sliver of damage, maybe. And that's the idea. So when systems basically have, like Pathfinder does this, where there's a huge modifier disparity between levels, when they do that, I dislike that the most, because that basically means once you get to a certain point, everything below or above a certain level is no longer, it just doesn't matter. It might as well not exist as a content system.
But I feel like that allows the GM and stuff to like control the conflict a little better and stuff. Because it also like lets you feel stronger when you finally find those levels of conflict in, and you just obliterate them. You feel that you've gotten stronger.
I don't disagree with you, but I think you can do that without guaranteeing that they can never hit you and you always hit them, you know? You could, if you make it so that you hit the goblins 99% of the time and they hit you 1% of the time, you still obliterate them completely. But the difference is, there's a tiny chance that one of the goblins might hit you in the leg with a sword.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference, and that does matter thematically, because, think of it like this now, a level 20 character going up against 5,000 goblins. The goblins will never hurt him. No matter what happens, they just can't, because his AC will be too high because of the systems, whatever. Even if you use the crit rule where the crit always hits, the player will have something that prevents some system. But that's all because of the capped system that basically says, okay, well, they just can't hit because they can't get higher in your AC ever. Or you always hit them because your roll is always higher in their minimum AC.
So you,
and, you know.
So you don't like things that just kind of go past the randomization of a dice roll.
Exactly.
I like how you answered that in like a narrative way. It's like there should always be a chance of something happening. But I also think, like, practically speaking at the table, like, why are we rolling the dice when the roll outcome doesn't matter? It's like either don't roll or or make it matter.
Both. For my own game that I'm making, I've mostly been a GM. I have only had 2 instances where I've been a player because my co-developer is able to run a few games. But for the most part, I've been GMing, and when I play other systems, it's a mix of both. I sometimes GM, I sometimes play. And I will say, to preface before we get into everything else, my game is mainly meant to be digital only. It's not meant to be played at a table. So a lot of the normal table systems don't necessarily apply, but we'll get into that a lot more later. It's just...
Don't worry, I am interested by that. My game can be played at the table, but it's so much easier.
Yeah.
Like in between the two.
Yeah, I mean, both.
Do you have any recent stories from your sessions, like or a horror story you want to bring up?
I mean, I have plenty of recent stories. So I've been playtesting and running my system for about 6 years now, and it's been in development for 7 years. So I have plenty of stories that are on the wacky side, some are on the somber side, some are on the crazy side. I have horror stories in the sense of there's actual horror involved, and I have horror stories in that my player party was awful and I couldn't run anything proper as a GM. I pick and choose something for me, and I'll give you a story.
Let's do bad players.
Okay. A while back, I had a group of players who I playtested with them prior. This was like their 4th playtesting campaign. And I had just finished a major system with my game, so I was giving it time to rest in terms of development and wanted to play a long-form campaign with my players. And so I was. And there was a point at about halfway through the campaign, so about 10 sessions in, there was a town that they came across. All of the people within the town were doing something odd. They were all repeating the same action over and over. And this meant, like, if you see a lady cleaning, she'd be cleaning the porch over and over in the same spot. See a dude walking down the street, he'd be walking down the street, turn around, come back, turn around, come back, and just repeat that. And they all had repeated dialogue. It felt very much like a video game. To my players, though, even though I described it pretty much exactly as I said to you, the only one who was at all suspicious just made a perception check, saw that they were real people, and said, it's fine. So the party walks through this medieval town, and they see this pristine, modern-looking hotel in the center of it. And a dude outside is inviting them to come in and stay and rest their weary heads. The party says, yeah, sure. Why not? I don't see any issue with this. They don't even do any checks. I had checks in my system to do things. They just walk in. Hotel's like, all right, cool, we'll give you a hotel room for free. You can have our suite room. And they're like, yeah, sure. They get in the elevator. Elevator starts pouring gas into the elevator room they're in, and they all fall asleep. They get mad at me. They're like, well, we couldn't have seen this coming. And I'm like, what do you mean? But then it gets worse. So they don't just fall asleep and wake up somewhere else. They fall asleep and have a dream. I don't tell them it's a dream, because that's how dreams work. You don't know you're dreaming until you figure it out. They find themselves in the middle of, like, a hellscape on top of a floating island, and there's these weird watcher creatures around them. They interact for a little while, and one by one, they slowly die. And when they die, I drag them into another channel, that person to another channel, to tell them what happens, and that they wake up, and they're in a jail cell, all of their items are gone, and they're next to their other party members. And the rest of them are sleeping. And then one by one, they all wake up. And at this point, we end session, because this has been like a 2-hour session already, and we're crunched on time. And effectively, they just were like, what the hell? What's wrong with you? Why did you ruin our game? And I'm like, first off, you don't even know what the outcome of this is yet. We haven't gotten to the point where you get out of the jail cell and see what's going on, because it wasn't actually a situation where they were screwed. And 2, they walked into it in the most literal way possible.
Yeah, that's...
You said your interaction, I was like, oh, is this going to be a trial with loaded heaters? Is this going to be a trial with loaded heaters?
So, to give you actual background information on what it was a traveling caravan of master illusionists who basically create an entire town using props, people, and illusion magic to effectively mask an area to look like a real town. And what they do with this is they use it to try and spot out intelligent people, basically player characters or adventurers who are smart enough to figure out the ruse, so they can then recruit them into their troupe. and this starts a whole quest line.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, the party failed, so they didn't get the quest line.
Damn.
And I wasn't expecting them to fail because at this point in the game, they were already very powerful. They already knew what they were doing. They already had fought several massive monsters and saved several towns. So when they came into this, I was like, okay, they're either going to figure it out right away or figure it out when they get to the hotel, and they did neither. And so here I was.
See, this is why you never assume your players will do something or figure something out. Never throw an insight-based player obstacle.
The part that pissed me off the most was that there were 6 players, and each and every one of them had been playing this for a long time, so they knew what I was like, and they knew how I managed things, and I had done stuff like this before, like tricks and horror story-esque events, so they knew that this could have been something, but they made a single perception check, said, yeah, that's a real person, then trusted the entire setting.
That must have been so disappointing for you at the table.
I could literally have just have flavored it like they die if they get the other person, and it would have ended the campaign right there, and they would have had no reason to be mad at me, because at the end of the day, they fell for everything.
Damn.
But I was, you know... Yeah.
Wow.
So there you go.
That was an amazing story. Yeah,
I can do the introductions if you want.
yeah, let's do that. We'll go there. Go.
So, I'm Chris, also known online as Optimistical. I don't have a studio name necessarily because I'm not a company as of the moment, but once 1.0 of my game is finished, I plan on actually opening a company so I can start a website, Kickstarter, etc. And when I do, it's probably going to be something like Flow State Company or something like that. I'm not going to do anything super fancy. Like I mentioned earlier, I was first exposed to playing TTRPGs about 7 years ago, but in reality, I have started with RPG-related stuff, not even like Fallout or Skyrim, I mean like RTS stuff turned into RPG, back when I was like 6 or 7, so that was almost 20 years ago.
Wow.
And to give you an explanation, Warcraft 3, very popular game when I was younger, I started playing it when I was like 4 or 5 because my mother was not a great person in terms of presenting me good products to play. So she gave me an R-rated game to play right off the bat. There you go, close enough. And for me, Warcraft 3, I initially played it for the campaign, and then when I was like 7, I started getting into like the online scene to figure out what games were out there. And I remember there was this one, I don't remember its name, it's like Titans, something like that, but it was like a role-playing game where you set up your towns and have players who are adventurers come into your town and do things that you DM. It was basically like a really, really boiled-down version of Dungeons & Dragons, but in a VTT that existed back then in like 2006, because, you know, Roll20 didn't exist basically at that point, or nor did Foundry or Tabletop Simulator or any of the other big ones. And that was really my first exposure to this kind of thing, and this entire hobby. I didn't necessarily get brought into it by somebody else. This was all me organically finding this through the internet. And when I was eventually in college, what started me down the path of designing my own TTRPG was basically just playing D&D under some other DMs and GMing it myself and realizing I wanted to make my own system because D&D is not what I want to work with when making my books. And I also know that players generally are lied to oftentimes when they get into D&D. They're told they can do anything, and in reality you can't do anything. You have to do what's within the system. That isn't what they tell you, so.
Off topic, how much did the Reforged cost? When they did the Reforged?
So, it's funny you mentioned that because I was actually I was in contact with the community team behind it. Jedi, who was the guy in charge of this Discord community team that was actually licensed by Blizzard to run the Reforged Discord. I was in his clan in Warcraft 3 way back when, the Fantastic Clan WTC, and I helped him design and develop things like Hero Push and Footman vs. Friends. So I knew him personally, and I was talking to him about it, and initially, before launch, we were excited, we were talking, but he had worries because there was stuff behind the scenes going on. He didn't tell me about it because that was part of his whole thing. He couldn't because he was working for Blizzard. But then when it happened and launched, he basically in DMs was talking to me like, yeah, this is like dog shit. We can't we're suffering on the Discord. I'm getting death threats right now because like he was being given death threats because he was indirectly associated with Reforged and how terrible Reforged launch was, and that's pretty much how we all felt. Like, the entire community was together basically going, oh, we can't make our custom maps anymore because all the map tools are on. Oh, our custom maps now don't port properly because they don't actually have all the models set up. Cool. That just screwed over the entire modding scene, and they didn't fix it until 4 years later. So that's great. So yeah, that's how I felt.
Yeah, I feel that pain. I was so excited to do that because my PC couldn't play my original version of it. I was like, oh, go and get it. And then I read what happened. I was like, oh.
Yeah. It was just an entire thing that happened that was so depressing because Blizzard has been dropping the ball a lot lately, as we all know from the news and internet. But that was like the first big, they dropped the ball, and then came after that the whole thing with their CEO, and then Overwatch, and then Hearthstone, and World of Warcraft is doing some good news, but you know, it's just been an overall mess with them. Also, Diablo Immortal was after Reforged, so that was fun. But yeah.
Diablo was my childhood.
I will say Diablo Immortal is not a bad game. It's just an overly monetized mobile game. So
yeah, no, like, it's an amazing game, held down and dragged to the bottom of the ocean by the monetization system.
exactly, yeah. So
how
yeah.
long do you work on your game or just play TTRPGs?
I'd say it's my primary hobby aside from playing video games. Like, I might play video games for 20, 30 hours a week because, you know, just on and off with my wife or playing by myself or my friend group. And then 10 to 20-ish hours is done either designing or playing my TTRPG. About 10 hours a week, I'd say, because I run 2 playtest games, and there's some in between of those two, about 4 to 5 hours. And then the actual design portion depends on how much I'm working on at that particular week, how much playtesting I got done, what I'm actually working on, so on and so forth.
It's a lot of dedication.
And what are your goals for this industry? Are you planning to get published, trying to make it big, or have your cult following?
So I'm not really aiming for publishing because I don't need to. If I'm a digital-only system, there's no publishing needed. I just am a digital product.
Well, that's what I mean, like, release it as a one.
Yeah. So effectively with 1.0 release, I'm going to pivot temporarily from doing development to working on a website and having an actual website as opposed to using Google Docs and Google Sheets, which has been serviceable for now for playtesting purposes. From there, and also prior to that, because you know actually 1.0 is going to be when I release to the public, I'm going to begin advertising. The primary thing is my game is meant to be free and open source for its entire lifetime. The only money in revenue I will ever collect is either from a Kickstarter or GoFundMe or Patreon, or if I do a website, maybe some kind of pro account that allows you to have multiple character sheets or access to tools that are not baseline available or needed for running a game. That would be it. And from there,
wow.
just keep making this game, keep living my life.
Wow. You're like pre-answering a lot of some stuff on the slides, but it's okay. We'll you're doing great. Let's get into some more things. All right.
What kind of stories do you want to tell?
I like the kind of story of, because my system is designed around this, but that's not necessarily something that's required by the setting. The setting could easily make it so that everything else will be compared to you, but generally speaking, the design of my game is that you were roughly the same power as an average civilian. So the kind of story I like, as opposed to a hero's journey, is more of a upbringing. You start off as civilians or like low-level soldiers, and your story is how you manage to get above that point, to the ranks above it, and eventually to the point where you're actually recognized for your glory, for your deeds, instead of it just being you are heroes, here is your story, it's you are nobody, here's how you became a hero. That's the kind of story I want this game to tell, effectively.
I love that. I'm a huge fan of Zero to Heroes stories and RPGs in general, so I think we'll have a lot to talk about there. Cool.
Okay, Alex.
Yeah, so crunchy or creamy peanut butter? Also game system.
Now, peanut butter-wise, creamy, but...
Okay.
The wrong answer.
Wrong answer on both. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh god, no.
It's okay. These are opinions. But yeah, so how crunchy would you say your game system is, or flow state, and where is that crunch?
If you were to try to run the system manually without any automation whatsoever, it's crunchier than Shadowrun, crunchier than any system that could possibly exist. But if you use the automated character sheet or websites, it is extremely creamy, creamier than 5e.
Wow. So you're just saying that the digital convenience and streamlining makes it run smooth.
Exactly. The only things that are necessarily difficult are damage calculations. Whenever you take damage, you need to reuse it from your armor and then put it to your armor and then your health. That's the only math that ever gets involved, and that's that's the hardest calculations that need to be done.
Okay. Yeah. How did you go about streamlining it? Yeah, digitally.
Using an incredibly difficult to program known as Google Sheets, and making a character sheet that is entirely fully automated and
I
as
see.
as possible as I can. And it is to the point now where everything, including your weapons, your skills, your armor, anything you have in your character is displayed automatically based on a couple of parameters you put in. The parameters being the material, the armor type, and that's it. You don't need anything fancier than that. All the damage is updated automatically based on your stats. Your skills are the same way.
I think Death will want your advice at some point, and there's some people I know doing similar things that I can connect you with.
I would say my sheet is probably the pinnacle in terms of like character sheet designs for Google Sheets specifically.
I saw it. It's impressive. We'll show it soon.
You only saw brief bits of it. You didn't see the actual.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot to how it works. It's getting constantly updated and functional. So
is it better to show now or when we're talking about like the game mechanics?
once we get into game mechanics, I'll
Okay.
show you because it is something that will require me telling you about game mechanics for you to understand.
Okay, sounds great. Let's go to the next segment then. Hot takes. I have my dice this time, so I'll roll a d4 here. That is a 2. We've rolled this one like almost every time. Game design gripes.
I mean, I kind of mentioned
Yeah.
this earlier with, I call it a lack of scaling, basically. Making it so your system is reliant on targeted scaling, where basically you go, okay, a level 5 creature can only ever fight a player between levels 2 and 10. Anything less or more than that, and it's an auto-win or an auto-loss. I don't like that, because that kind of system inherently limits the DM's capabilities. It basically tells the DM, I'm using D&D terms for simplicity, you have to pick between a certain CR level, otherwise the creature's not going to do anything in the fight. And I don't like that. Another thing I don't like necessarily is, and this is the most controversial take you'll hear,
Okay.
I don't like conventional die systems. I don't use one for my system, a conventional die system. I use a modular die system where the die size changes based on things and stuff. And I don't mean changes like goes up a step. I mean changes the number in the die size changes. Like, if it's a D32, it's a D32. You roll that digitally. And a lot of people don't
Okay.
like that kind of system in terms of, like, from a physical mindset. But coming from a digital mindset, what's the difference between rolling a D32 and a D20? You just type in the same thing either way. Sure, one can be rolled physically and the other can't, but in a digital sense, that doesn't matter. It's just pick a number between one and that, and that's it.
And when you say conventional dice system, you mean just like some dice size plus modifier?
Yeah, some dice size plus modifier dice pool systems. My favorite conventional dice system is the D100 because it's a percentile system, therefore it's double focus. But I still don't like it because it's limiting. Call of Cthulhu is probably the best system for this. After about 20 sessions playing through a Call of Cthulhu campaign, if you follow the base rules, you start to have absurd rolls that go beyond the D100, and they start breaking the game down. And that happens infrequently with other games, but I don't mean this as a harsh thing against certain people, but like,
Yeah.
the worse designed a game is, the faster this happens, where the die rolls stop mattering.
Yeah, it's
It's just like,
the friction between the rules interacting like breaks things down more. Yeah. How do you feel about like the physical weird dice like that Dungeon Crawl Classics uses or some other
in
esoteric game
terms of any
systems?
physical dice in general, I'm not here to say that physical systems suck. I'm here to say that I like digital systems because they what they can offer as opposed to physical systems.
Yeah.
And I think physical systems have their merit as well. For one, being able to visualize not only a board or a table, but also to actually feel the dice you roll. I understand there's appeal to that, and a lot of people like that. In terms of like just the coolness of how dice look, yes, you can do that digitally too, but there's a whole limitation with that. But I've seen like gel dice, I've seen like fancy looking, odd shaped dice that you're talking about. They're cool, but at the end of the day, in my mind, when I'm developing my TTRPG, I look at those and I go, that's just a way to get a number between 1 and something.
You're going for function. You're function over form.
Exactly the case.
I like that. Awesome. That is a very hot take. And I prefer in person. I'm old school in that way, but I respect it. I respect it. It is the future, most likely.
I mean, I agree there because inevitably we're going to end up being mostly digital at some point. I mean, we already were for like 2 years with COVID, so it's only going to get more like that as time goes on with digital stuff improving. And at some point, physical dice are going to become pushed so far to the side and so niche that every system stops caring. I mean, look at stuff like Magic the Gathering, where now they have a digital client that they primarily focus on as opposed to physical play. It's like that. You know, companies are starting to realize that
Pretty
digital...
sure that they're gonna struggle soon due to what happened with Sparkle.
Of course, yeah, but you know what I mean. They're still pushing a lot more digitally than they are physically with the Alchemy sets, for example, because those didn't exist in physical because they can't, and they were exclusive to digital, and that was their first attempt at making something digital only.
Yeah, you're just describing a general trend. Of course, there's setbacks.
Yeah. Slowly, like D&D Beyond being a thing and being bought out by Wizards of the Coast, and then being pushed to the point where now it's basically the only way you can make a character sheet, even for physical things. Now we are here. You know, it's just becoming the thing. Is that using a digital medium in some way, somehow, is becoming normal to the point where you can have a physical character sheet and roll dice, but it's so rare.
You know, until you said the last sentence or two, I was like completely on board. I do think that the personal value that tabletop role playing games has, like, is in creating third spaces like in person, and I think that there will be a kind of a fracture at some point between the digital and the physical RPGs.
I think it's already happened for the most part, but that was like 4 or 5 years ago, and then the OGL crisis and everything with D&D has created like a constant need of like this split, and to the point where in my digital circles, I don't really see anyone who plays physically exclusively anymore. But I know people in real life who do. Just don't see them in digital spaces anymore. So,
okay.
Anyway, let's continue.
Yeah, that is a huge topic that is not fitting on this topic table. Anyway, let's talk about your game system flow state. Let me roll this dice. 3. Let's talk about skills and exploration in your game. You can cover it broadly, or we can roll for a more specific. Yeah.
I mean, I could go broadly, but I could just roll because
We go. It's fine.
It's easier for me to think.
Sure. 5. Scale of travel. So if there is travel in your game, what is the scale of that? What does that look like?
As big as you want. So my game is setting agnostic, meaning you don't have to have a medieval fantasy setting for my game to work in it. I've run this game in sci-fi, I've run this game in post-apocalyptic, I've run this game in fantasy, medieval, I've run this game in fantasy sci-fi where there's magic and sci-fi happening at the same time. And at the end of the day, the travel scale can be as small as a person traveling within a city or a small region to traveling between entire solar systems. It varies. Campaign to campaign.
Okay, so it's a bit of a non-question due to the setting agnostic nature.
Yeah, it's basically like the scope and the systems I have within my game. I don't have a dedicated vehicle system just yet, but the intent is with a vehicle system that it will just function, allowing you to go as far as you want and as money. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's find a different one then. I'm rolling a d6 on this d8 table, so let's fix that.
That would help.
Yeah. How does surviving and navigating? What does that look like in your game?
So within my system,
Yeah, number 4.
Just, like, blanking on it. So my game, unlike a lot of other fantasy style games, the magic system in it is not something that you can just create something that solves survival. You don't just go, oh, I'm going to create an infinite amount of food now, and then there's an infinite amount of food, and surviving doesn't matter. Within my system, anything created, anything willed into existence, has to be something that is created using your own energy, and therefore can never exceed it. That's just like a thematic rule. Not mechanically, it works how you would think it would, but thematically. This means that surviving requires actual survival. Even if you have magic, even if you have mental skills for manifesting some reality, that's not going to immediately help you survive every scenario. Like I said before, I've run games in post-apocalyptic scenarios. I've run games in zombie survival scenarios, stranded on an island or unknown continent survival. And those games work exactly as you would think. Party is stranded, they need to find sources of food. Magic helps them achieve those goals, but the same as martial and mental and any other system would. And they need to use trade professions, which do exist in my system, to actually accomplish these goals. They need to hunt, they need to gather, they need to actually put in legwork to get that thing done. Navigating kind of falls into the scale of travel.
Yeah.
You move around, there are paces of travel, fast, medium, and slow. They change the level of perception available to you at each one.
Well, I guess are you for survival and navigating, are you using a more like general way to resolve that rules wise?
My system actually has written rules for hunting, gathering, and the outcomes of them, but the outcomes are generic. Like, it just says you hunt a game in the area. The DM decides what that is based on the rules made, in terms of like the size of the creature, how many of the creatures, etc. So it's mostly generic in that the system allows you to insert any creature into the scenario or change the values if you want, but the system does exist and there is an actual table that people roll on for various things for that kind of survival.
Sounds very modular.
That's the idea.
Nice. Well, let's do one more if we don't like it, or we'll see. If we roll the same one again, we'll move on. 8. Helping others in your game system. What does that look like, narratively, mechanically?
So, this is something that, it depends on what your context is, if you're talking combat or out of combat. In combat, I have a much more reactive combat. What was I just hearing?
It's probably Death. Don't worry about it. Here, go ahead. Okay. Go again.
Sorry, continuing. In combat, my system, I'll explain the combat system a lot more later. Yes, I can hear you. Is it testing?
No, because the microphone's listening off right now.
I don't know. It's just making sure it's off on Discord. That's
yeah, we're using Discord audio.
No, I have a button on my microphone itself to turn it off.
Maybe it's inputting from a different device than your microphone.
Yeah.
We're having a lot of technical stuff today.
Anyway, so getting back to it.
Yeah.
In combat, basically, there's a lot more reactions people can take. I'll explain all of that when we get to the combat section, but
sure.
Because there's a lot more reactions, there's a lot more openness for things like supports and tanks to actually perform their job as listed in an RPG. So a tank can actually block an attack coming at their ally. A support can actually shield their ally in a critical moment. This plays a lot into how characters and parties form. If you just have a bunch of damage characters entering a party, you're going to end up having someone die because something attacks them and they can't dodge in time. And that's just going to happen. So having a support or a tank helps alleviate those issues, so there is an innate system to help each other built in because of that innate reactiveness in combat.
And does that reaction happen before or after the outcome?
Before.
Okay.
Always. Unless the reaction specifically is like you heal the damage that was dealt, then it would happen after. We'll get into it more in the combat.
Okay.
System, but
no problem.
I shoot you with a gun, your ally shields you, then the gun shot hits you. That kind of thing.
Got it. Okay, we'll go to the broader.
Yeah, sure.
We'll find a different unless you had something else to say. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say out of combat works as you would expect. You can help each other with things. It just adds additional rolls to the numbers of things you're doing. That's pretty self-explanatory.
Okay. Yeah, Death. Can you go back to the the table topic soft table. All right. Oh my god, I'm using my dice this time. Crazy. One core mechanic. You touched on it earlier with the scaling, like bunch of different digital dice sizes. Yeah, so if you want to go over it in general,
Yeah, I can just go over the entire core mechanic system.
Yeah, go for it.
Like,
Sure. If you'd like to share screens, you're welcome to.
yeah, I'm about to.
Cool.
So this is going to be my generic rules document. This recently got a faceless visual, so it is a lot cleaner looking.
Yes, I realize that. Can you? I'm just showing your screen right now, which is not what I wanted to do.
Yeah, can you unshow your screen real quick so we can have my screen show primarily first? There you go. That's all you do. Fantastic. Okay. So,
I'm having some issues on my end here.
Full screen, whatever you have.
It's. I click this and it goes into full screen. Let me. Picture. Here.
There's a button where you can just unclick click my shared screen to hit enlarge video and increases clarity on the top right of it.
Yeah, you're gonna. Okay, so.
On
picture in picture.
Screen, click enlarge video and increases clarity, and you should be good.
Can you repeat that?
When you mouse over my screen on your screen, you should see a thing at the top right of it that says enlarge video and increases clarity.
I don't see that.
There should be like a little box that looks like gray.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, sorry. All right, we're looking at your document, and we did it. Back to the show.
So, I'm just gonna generally go over my whole system here in its systems and how it works. So, my system can be broken down into 3 archetypes. It's a classless system, meaning you can pick into any of these archetypes at any time, but if you want to put skill points into them to achieve some of the skill trees that are in them, you should also have accompanying attributes of that type, because if you don't, then your skills aren't going to do as much. What that means is, as I'll show you, there are 3 attribute groups. There is your body, which comes up with strength, dex, and con. Your mind, which is ponderance, snappets, and willpower, which if you want me to, I can explain what each of those mean, but it's up to you.
It's okay. I do like the 3 stat split that you have. It reminds me of Vampire the Masquerade, I believe has it.
And then the final one is Spirit with Reach, Grasp, and Build. And what this effectively means is whenever you get attribute points, like when you're creating your character, or whenever you finish a session and you get attribute points, you can put them into any of the sub-attributes, like Ponderance, Snappets, Willpower, Reach, Grasp, Build. And whenever you do, they go up. That's pretty simple. It's nothing more fancy than that. So if you have 10 attribute points, you put them into Reach. You have 10 Reach now, if you didn't before. Easy and simple. I'll show a character sheet in a little bit to kind of explain this in more detail and show it out how it actually works. But your spirit, mind, and body are stats themselves. They're only influenced by their substats, though. So if you have 10 strength, 12 dex, and 13 con, that means you'll have 35 total body, which is relevant for certain things. And all of these stats, they are meaningful in their own ways within their own archetypes. But if you're, for example, playing a mental character, so someone who manifests their will into things, and that's all you're focusing on, you can completely ignore the body stats and the spirit stats. They are just not needed. And as a result, you just have 3 stats. So while this 9-stat system with 3 other overstats may look complicated, for new players, it's relatively easy because you just focus on 3 stats at a time, and they're pretty self-explanatory in how they work. I will go through how that functions when I actually get to the character sheet breakdown soon, but for the moment, I'll just get a bunch of documents for this. The basic rules are as follows. Like I said, there are 3 archetypes. Each of the archetypes are maintaining their own skill trees and their own equipment system for how they function. The reason why mental is not listed here just yet is because my mental system is currently under rework, so I'll explain that.
It's totally fine.
Anytime the word archetypal is referred to, it is referencing something that is within these systems. So whenever I say an archetypal equipment, it means something that is specifically part of the martial, mental, or magic equipment. A healing potion, for example, is not an archetypal equipment because it is agnostic of archetype to be used. A dagger, however, is an archetypal piece of equipment because it's specifically martial. A mage can't use a dagger outside of some specific magical skills. They don't use it as their equipment, but a martial character does. So that's the difference between those two. There's also generic and racial skill trees. These don't have their own equipment, generally speaking, but they might, like certain races, might have their own skill trees that are based on a piece of equipment. I don't know how that would function. Basically, that's just an setting.
I like this classification. Could you give me an example of mental?
Mental? Okay, so I'll kind of break down each of the archetypes a little
Okay.
bit in detail. Martial is martial, a character using a weapon of a certain type, and having skills with that weapon or without that weapon. Unarmed, say weapons like specifically a bladed weapon. My system uses weapon types, and their types determine how powerful, like what stats it uses and what skill trees it has access to. So a bladed weapon, players using a bladed weapon, there's a bladed skill tree. They might also pick up strength or dexterity skill trees. They might also pick up the offense or defense generic skill trees. Each of these skill trees will allow them to do additional things aside from just hitting with their weapon. That's martial characters in a nutshell. They also get armor, which I'll explain armor when I get to the object section eventually, but just understand it is its own system that does work separately. Mental characters. I like referring to mental as old magic in my system because it's thematically how it works. Basically, you will and manifest things to exist, and when those things become existent, they are then made real. So, if I manifest fire, there's actually fire in front of me. That's what happens. That may sound a little confusing. It won't be once I get to magic. But basically, anytime all of the mental trees are all about manifesting different emotions and feelings into reality in various forms. And you can use these things called essences to buff those manifestations that are then those essences are consumed upon use, and that's their equipment system. And this can be anything from creating a fire in front of you to creating a shell around an ally to defend them to manifesting an actual manifestation of emotion in front of you that has its own stat block and stuff. Finally, magic system. It's spells and magic, as you would expect in most fantasy systems. However, how they work isn't you aren't pulling this magic from some higher plane. You are literally pulling off a piece of your own spirit and transforming it into something. That thing is just a mimicry of what it actually is. So if I create fire using magic, it doesn't actually create a fire that then burns without that magic still being there. As soon as that magic goes away, it stops burning. If it lights something on fire, that's a different story. But that fire itself that was created by the magic goes away with that magic, and the same with all other magic. Another example is a summon. If I summon something, that thing can take on any form I want it to visually. But in reality, its stats and its systems are the same as another thing that might be summoned as well. The difference is the stats and how you distribute them and which skill trees you can give. So if I create something that looks like a jaguar, it only looks like one. It isn't actually a jaguar.
It's a very interesting distinction between mental and magic.
Yeah.
How did you come up with that? Because what I'm hearing is mental is like, it's like your will to make things real, right?
Yes.
And then magic is like you take a piece of your soul and it like pretends to be what you said, right?
Yep. So the magic system is pretty common actually to create similar things like that. I don't, off the top of my head, I can't think of other systems that do it, but I know there are ones out there that have a system of magic where you create something that's temporary, and when you die, if your soul dies, that magic dies with it. That kind of system is pretty known through some magic needs, aside from, like, obviously D&D doesn't do this. D&D does the weave and other bullshit that it has, but there are systems like that that exist within RPGs and TTRPGs, I'm sure, but I don't remember where I got the inspiration from, because it's been so long since I came up with that, 6 years ago now.
No.
And for mental, I'm going to be honest with you, I came up with that thanks to the Fallen London series and the Secret History series, also known as Cultist Simulator and Multihours on Steam, which they helped me create and not literally they, but like those games created, helped me by inspiring me to create a system where you manifest raw emotion into reality.
That's really cool. I've noticed some RPGs have a touchstone section, so people can kind of see where they got certain things from.
Yeah.
I would recommend that if you have
Probably will at some
time.
point, but the thing is, it's so far. Originally, when I made my mental system, it was basically directly ripped from Secret Histories because I had no other doing it. I literally just ripped their principal system. But as it is now, it's almost nothing the same. Inspiration, sure, but like literal rulings and systems, absolutely nothing is taken anymore. It's all its own system. It's the same with most of this. While you might see some similarities to other game systems, I didn't pull from a specific game system for any of my systems. I literally just play tested and play tested and play tested down what I think are the best for my systems. If that makes sense.
Yeah. By the way, I was looking at your skill check, so it's interesting. Your stat is the random, is the exact dice size that you're rolling.
There's no modifiers. You literally just roll a die, and the result is a number between 1 and whatever.
That. Wow.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as I mentioned earlier, with the whole a goblin striking a demigod might roll a d10,000. The goblin might roll a d30. There's still a chance of beating the demigod. And I think that part is an intriguing part because with the systems in my game, you can actually impose a ton of disadvantages on that demigod, give the kobold or the goblin a bunch of advantages, and then make it a lot easier to actually achieve the goal of hitting it. Obviously, it would still be pretty insane to hit it.
Yeah. And are those advantages? Are they just adjusting what that dice size is?
So you can see down here, I list
Yes.
advantage
Oh, okay.
and disadvantage are listed as such.
I see.
Literally, they stack, and for every stack of it, you roll an additional and do that. So
I see.
if you stack enough disadvantages onto someone, they'll roll such low defense dice that they will basically get like a 4, even if they have a d10,000. You stack like 100 disadvantages on them, because you can do that. And the way you get those advantage and disadvantage stacks is through various skills and subsystems and basic game mechanics of knocking someone prone or grappling somebody, things like that. And so this creates much more of a, if you're fighting a big thing, the goal isn't just deal damage to it. The goal is find ways to disadvantage it enough so that you can begin dealing lots of damage to it and actually affecting with other skills and abilities. So it becomes much more of a, how do we actually tackle this creature rather than, okay, just throw everything at it as well, you know?
So here's a situation I was thinking of for advantage disadvantage. So like if let's say I'm in combat with something and we're both like, you know, there's some like we're in mud or something, and would that give both of us an advantage, or would that just even out and cancel out?
So if, for example, normally mud in my system just makes it so 8 movement costs more reaction points.
Okay, vines, thorny vines, whatever it
If
is.
there was something that was actually implying disadvantage to both of you, it would imply disadvantage to both of you. And the reason why that is because my system uses a roll against the system for combat. So you roll attack, they roll defense. So on your attack roll, you'd have disadvantage, but on their defense roll, they'd have disadvantage.
Mhm.
Which is probably not a great thing for either of you, but eventually effectively evens out unless one of you has a much higher score than the other, then it is worse for them. So basically, unskilled characters, i.e. people with really low die sizes, are less affected by advantage and disadvantage by the nature of their die size being incredibly small. Whereas if you have a huge die size like a d10,000, a single disadvantage might be the difference between a 7,000 on your die result and a 3,000 on your die result.
Yeah.
It's a swing.
And so how is that result interpreted? I think that's like the final step.
What do you mean by that?
Well, so I roll a 5, you roll a 300. So what does that mean?
Okay, so I'll get to that section in a moment. I just want to finish what I'm saying
Okay,
here.
go ahead.
So obviously, skill checks, die size, all that was just explained. You get skill points. These skill points are utilized to upgrade your skill trees. That's basically the easiest way to describe it, and there's a little explanation. Whenever you raise a skill tree from a tier to another tier, it costs an amount of skill points equal to that next tier. So, basically think of it like this. To go from tier 2 to tier 3, you need to spend 3 skill points.
Mhm.
Tier 3 to tier 4, you then need to spend an additional 4 skill points. So to get from tier 0, i.e. haven't gotten it, to tier 5 in a skill tree, is 15 total. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 is 15. It's the same across the board for all skill trees. so there's nothing that ever changes for that, and eventually there will be things higher in Tier 6 in the system, but that's going to be for 1.0 as Tier 5. So, that aside, let's continue. A lot of this other stuff is very situational. I'm going to mostly skip through this to get to the actual combat system.
Sure.
So, combat. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. We'll just jump in. Go ahead.
Sure. So combat works like this. You have an attack die. That attack die is equal in size to your total number of skill points. So you have 30 skill points, roll a d30 to attack. And that's for everything. Casting a spell, manifesting something onto somebody, hitting someone with a sword, punching someone in the face at a bar. All of those roll an attack die. It's universal, and it shouldn't ever change within a session. It only changes around sessions. So this should never realistically be a problem in any session. Your defense die, you take that attack die and you split it in half. You get 2 dice that are both equal to half its size. So if you have a d30, you roll 2d15 for defense dice. Same for every creature, same for every defensive roll. And the reason why they're like that is because this results in a slightly better chance for defenders, while attackers still win ties. So this ends up evening out that system.
Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I would love to see your character sheet and like an example. I think that might.
I'll give it a moment. Let me
okay.
Through the rest of this.
Sorry.
The rest of the stuff is not necessarily displayed in the character sheet.
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking at the points. Why 6? I'm curious.
So, this is going to sound very, very obvious when I say it out loud. It's because
okay.
every action point is equal to the number of seconds in a round.
I don't think that was. I don't think that's particularly obvious. That's cool.
Yeah,
Simulationist.
In my system and most systems, it's 6 seconds per round, so each AP is a second. This basically means you can actually equate 1 AP usage to 1 second of time passage, which also helps with other systems as well, like turning movement speed. I use my movement speed system to be realistic. I don't design it to be like D&D's, where a character moves 30 feet over 6 seconds, which is incredibly slow in real life.
Is your game and the combat still turn-based?
Yes.
Okay.
I couldn't ever make a super realistic combat system without it being overly complex, so the system is literally just roll an initiative.
Yeah, because I'm imagining like a evil version of your game where like you're like using your AP like simultaneously, kind of Hackmaster style.
Back 6 years ago, I tried to design a system like that, and I just couldn't. It was too complicated and required too many rules and subsystems, and it was just too much.
That's totally fair.
Bogged the system down for what I wanted it to do, basically. And finally, the last thing is that's really important is movement and health. Movement is pretty standard. You move using 1 AP. If you're restricted like rough or difficult terrain, that AP cost is increased, not your movement speed necessarily. So if you're in mud, which would technically be difficult terrain because it's not rough. Rough terrain is like uneasy ground or thickets. Mud is something where your character's actually getting stuck in. This effectively means you only move twice a turn as opposed to 6 times a turn, which is pretty hefty of a disadvantage.
Yeah.
And your movement is just, for standard characters, you probably move about 30 feet per AP, so you can move about 180 feet a turn, which may sound like an insane amount, but realistically...
That's all you're doing.
Yeah. Kind of. You can move and act simultaneously so long as the action and the movement take up the same span of time. What this means is, I move... You are, let's say you're 50 feet away from me. My movement's 30 feet. I can move up to you with just 2 AP, because 30 feet of movement, 1 AP to get 30, and another AP to get to the 50. As a result, that past 2 AP there can be used to make an attack roll, because it's me coming at you with an attack roll. But if you were 100 feet away and only had 30 feet of movement, it would take me 4 AP to get to you.
Yeah.
I can only use the latter 2 of those to attack you. The first 2, unless I have ranged attack, I can't do anything with. So there's a reason.
So you're saying you can mix stuff in between the movement, and that uses the existing AP like of that movement, or uses like separate?
It uses the same AP that movement uses as well. So effectively, it's free to do.
So if I'm 180 feet away from you, and you're just running at me, like you're doing like 1 attack on me.
I can get an attack against you, or if I'm dual wielding 2 attacks against you, because you hit with both.
Okay.
But that means that you can run at somebody and hit them, and there are actual run and gun tactics to run up to someone, smack them 3 times, because you run up to them with 2 AP, smack them with that 2 AP, then 2 AP, and then 2 more AP, and then with that last 2 AP you move away from them as well.
Yeah, I appreciate you covering the more like the less formulaic parts of your combat rules, because obviously like your formulas, their formulas, and they are fairly dense. You did say this is a crunchy game, so
Obviously, there's a lot of formulas here. When I show the character sheet in a moment, it'll make it really simple. But
yeah.
finally, the last system I want to show off to keep things simple is health. Health is not a permanent loss, but a very hard thing to get back. You can regen on rest, but your regen is very small compared to your total health. You'll probably regen about a 10th or a 20th of your total health, depending on your stats. Which means that it'll take you like 3 weeks to recover your health full, which is really, really slow. And that's intentional. Because health loss in this game is basically something that should never happen. A character should never be unarmored. A character should never be undefended. They should have armor, they should have some kind of defensive skills, they should have something to protect themselves. If you go as a full offense character, you need to have a support or a tank to lean on. Because if you don't, if someone hits you, you lose health, and that health loss is a big deal. Additionally, there is a system called pain threshold in this game. It's a value of health that's under half your health, but can be anywhere around that. It's based on some calculations. But if you ever go below that number, you fall unconscious and stay unconscious until you rise back above that number, which normally just happens when you rest.
I'm here. I'm hearing a lot of brutal things together that it's like a death spiral, and I love death spirals. Like I mean, this feels very well suited for like you're playing starting at that zero to hero like the. I like how brutal your game is.
Yeah, that's the exact intent of it. Basically, is that I want it to be brutal, but on the inverse, some small note, energy, which you might see down here at the bottom, is your resource. That's what you use to spend on everything and anything. You have an amount of energy, and your energy regenerates every turn. There's no losing max energy. There's no I'm out of energy. I can't do anything forever. As soon as combat ends, you get all your resources back, and you can do everything you can again. It's just health that matters. So, losing health or using health are big deals within the system as a result. Other than that, most of this other stuff I will get into with your later iteration things. But for now, I'm going to open up the character sheet and show you what it looks like.
Hell yeah. I'm excited to see this.
Here's the character sheet. It may look like a ton to immediately parse over, but as I said before, the system is part within here. So you see you have your body here, your mind here, and your spirit here. Pretty self-explanatory. And you'll also notice on the right side, the orange section is basically your everything else. Your health, your energy regen, your pain threshold, HP regen, and your perception, stealth, and initiative checks. Now, let's say I'm playing a starter martial character. I want to put in 3 stats to each one because I'm extremely boring and I don't really have any flavor to my character other than just being a well-rounder.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. You may have noticed the stat total updated. The stat minimum, which is just a third of your stat, which is used for calculations, has also updated. Your total body is updated, as well as all the stuff on the right is updated automatically. And that's it. Simple as that. I just put in those stats, it calculates everything automatically. If I change my character size, for example, if I'm playing a gnome or a halfling, it updates everything on the right side automatically. If I'm playing a size 4 character, which would be, I don't know, like Goliath, I guess, it would update everything automatically as well. All of these systems work seamlessly within this character sheet, and are intended to work seamlessly within this character sheet.
I'm also seeing you have the 5 senses down there, which is very intimidating on first look.
Yes. This is not necessarily meant to be something you pay attention to at the start of the character sheet, but effectively you can look at it like this. Is there a noise that just happened? Okay. How loud was the noise? It was a gunshot. Okay. Up to far means 1,000 feet. You automatically pass so you know exactly where it's coming from and where it goes. Simple as that. Next up, medium noise, up to small. So say someone's shouting, which is not necessarily a loud noise, but it can be in certain scenarios. It means up to small, meaning up to 100 feet away, you automatically sense them. But if it's between 100 and 1,000, then you need to make a check. And that check would be a perception check against their stealth check if they're making one or it may look daunting, but the system is intended to kind of give players and DMs an idea of how things play out. And these senses can be modified through a couple different skill trees, but generally everyone's character sheet senses will look like this, which is really easy for people to figure out. You know, it's once you get through how to parse it, it's not bad. And the reason why all this is needed is because this system has a more robust stealth and perception system. It's not just I roll perception, I find you. There's actually a system where if your character is heavily obscured, you might notice down here, heavily obscured means they're completely within a bush and they're camouflaged. You would need to be in melee of them to be able to make a check against them. Otherwise, you can't see them. If they make an attack against you, you would still, unless you can see the direction the attack is coming from and it's a projectile, you would still not be able to actually check for them. You would have to get to them and check them. So this system is a little bit more complicated, but again, you can kind of ignore this whole section. Generally speaking, the DM, which I will have a DM briefing written for this with 1.0, is to literally just say the census system is something the DM handles and it's on your character sheet for visualization.
It's just like a tool, just for ease of play.
And for players who actually are curious, it is written in the rules how these all work, so if you want to actually figure it out yourself, it's not overly complex.
Is there like a filled out character sheet that you could maybe pull up?
Well, I was going to say, this is technically filled out for a martial character as is. Obviously, we haven't spent any skill points yet, but this main sheet is completely done. You have your 30, 30, 30, and the next step you would go to is these tabs down here. You might see defense, generic, martial, and magic. So we go to the martial tab, and you're suddenly greeted with this giant wall of red, but you'll see a bunch of skill trees here. And for generic martial character, let's say you start off with martial theory, which is the first martial tree that you need to unlock all the rest at tier 5. And let's just pick a random weapon and say it's a tier 5. Let's say strike. Both of those being a tier 5 is standard for a standard starting character with 30 skill points. So that's it. Technically speaking, if you wanted your character to start with no armor or weapons, your character's done right now. There's nothing else you would technically need to do. But obviously we're going to need to do some things. So as you scroll down, you'll see this section called non-weapon abilities. On the right here, you will see a section that's just what you can do in combat, which all of these are actions that are available to every martial character. Attacking, grappling, parrying, throwing, rising and diving, which are reaction points, improvised weapons, and you also get access to basic regeneration if you have martial 3-5, as well as you get max HP. Very slowly. Then you also have up here, your unarmed strike, which just does damage. Everything else about it you can pretty much do. So then you scroll down, and you see a section called weapons and their abilities. Again, the DM is mostly the person to guide people through this. It's not as if you're going to characters completely blind. So let's start off by picking the type. We picked out striker weapons for our character's skill tree. We also need to pick a material. Let's just say iron. Cool. So this damage is the damage based on your character's stats and the material chosen. Oh, I should probably be two-handed. There you go. The stats of your character and the material chosen. And then these are the skills with an energy cost based on the weapon, as well as their effects. Also, I don't know why it's doing this, but I don't know why that's doing that. I think it's because I'm in F11 mode, that has some weird issues, but
It's totally fine. This is a lot, dude. Like, how long have you been working on this sheet for?
6 years. I think since 2019 was when I started actually automating my sheet. So obviously it is done up to the point of my game being finished. As you can see, it's stable in the top left. I have no more development needed on this character sheet, as is. Meaning, as I update my game and add more content to my game, it'll need to be added to the character sheet. But until then, this character sheet is completely usable and playable for my current system.
And where did those abilities generate from?
Yeah, that's the fun part. So those are from the striker skill tree.
Right.
You pick a striker weapon, you have the striker skill tree. They generated from a place known as Equip Check, which
It's
is
a huge list.
this menacing
Oh,
document.
dude.
A large amount of lists and automated filter systems. And you can see exactly where they came from is right here. These are literally pound for pound exactly the things, and you can see there's code in the top here that displays if you have the actual skill tree learned, it displays this skill, blah 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 blah, and then up here is where it's pulling it to actually display for that particular weapon. So if you have a second weapon that's not a striker weapon, it'll show its set stuff just below it. So I'll do that real quick. My cat's being a menace 1 second. If I pick defender weapons and I set up a defender weapon as my secondary weapon, it will show the defender's list instead. And you can see there's the defender stuff, there's the defender stuff. This is the weapon 2, this is weapon 1. It looks a lot, but sincerely, the actual back-end coding of this is not insanely complicated aside from a few parts. This is just pulling from a list and generating lists.
I mean, it's a lot that you've made.
Exactly.
I'm impressed.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So we can do all these things.
You made a crunchy game by yourself that just has a functional character sheet with a list. That's already commendable.
This entire system doesn't require a lot. And you may be wondering how magic looks, because surely magic has a lot of spells and systems with it. It does, but it's quite easy to use. I'm gonna ignore the equipment for magic real quick and just kind of generate these. So Support Arcana has some list of spells. So when you go to make a spell, you literally just pick a spell from a pre-generated list of the spells you have available. This automatically populates all the spells you have available. So if I were to change Support Arcana and to say the slashing magic trait, it would generate a new list of spells for each one, and I can literally click on one, and it'll list out what exactly that spell does for each and every selection on each and every one of these.
Wow. We're gonna do the. I'm just gonna leave for 5 to 10 minutes, and you're gonna talk to Death about this character sheet and in general. I'll be back shortly.
I'm sure Death has a few things to ask. What have you observed so far? What questions might you have?
They're all technical stuff that I don't, that doesn't matter, because I'm trying to get high out here to do a lot of this stuff.
I'm sure, yeah.
Like, the main problem that my sheet has, for example, is that my spells are customizable, so I can't do drop-down menus when you're doing.
So here's the fun thing. My spells are also customizable. I'll show you. I have, in my system, a couple of spells within the Voodoo tree in which you pick a setup trigger. So let me go and do pain. So you see it says select something from the unique drop-down. You pick one of these, and it modifies the first part of the tree to be a different type of trigger.
Like, what I mean is that there are no, like, for example, you just said, I'm going to pick the pain spell. That's not a thing. It's individual actions and effects that you have to put together.
You can still do that. As long as those actions and effects are defined in a list, you can still pull from them and have them be drop-downs that people select.
But, like, I gotta figure out how to do all that shit.
That's how I did it for my weapons, armor, and rarity system. So you might see there's a rarity system here. Each rarity has its own unique list of materials within it. So I pick common, you'll see there's iron, tin, and copper. Uncommon has steel, nickel, titanium, nickel.
How do you make the drop-downs change for each one?
So if you go to data, data validation, and then I click on F87, you'll notice it is dropped down from a range, and the range is within the equip check document, 75 to 81 in the I section. Okay, so let's go over there and check it real quick. So I 87 to 75 to 81. If I notice down here, it is literally a list that is displaying based on this selected value, rarity, being checked against these material lists and displaying these four here because they're both next to uncommon using a filter list. And so when I change it to common, it displays these instead. When I change it to rare, it displays these instead. So on and so forth. Yeah. I'll show it to you. I'll show it to you in your sheet whenever after this is all done. You know, when we have time to sit down. But this is how it works. Yeah.
Do you feel that your system, someone who doesn't have you, doesn't have anyone else, could get it if they spent like 10 minutes to understand your system?
I would say no without any context whatsoever because they would need some kind of character creation guide. But with a character creation guide that points them what to do in the sheet, yeah, I'd say so. If there was, if you were just handed the sheet and told me a character, you would probably be lost as to what even to start with. But the intent is that's never going to happen because you're either going to have a character creation document or a DM to guide you, or another player who's played this game, or a website, or whatever. So the intent is that, yes, this document, this sheet, is a little confusing to start, but as soon as you get the hang of it, you enter a flow state, as the game name suggests. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm. Okay.
What do you mean by water mechanics specifically? Because like when you say water,
liquid mechanics, but I doubt that's
if I go to objects, there's a couple different material types for objects. Liquid is one of them. So liquids are simulated within the game.
You get.
In addition to that, hold on, I'm not done yet. If I go into the quick links and go to Magic Tree,
Dude, you're over. Damn.
No, I'm doing this.
You're doing it. No.
How do I?
We're doing this.
Then I go to Magic Skill Tree and I go to Animation. I can animate specifically any liquid of a chosen type. And it
Wow.
There you go. You can create a flowing water liquid golem. Yeah.
This is a challenge to anyone making a crunchy RPG. If you can, let's see how you compare to this.
You can. So I always like this question to my players, or to people who are always interviewing me or asking me about my system. Ask me if you can do something in my system that you can do in other art systems or in your ideal fantasy system, and I'll tell you whether or not it's possible and how it's possible.
And that's the best thing about Creator is either you catch them off guard or like, oh yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, and it's never the first one for me because I've always had the thing of like, yeah, that's possible or that will be possible. So, do you have any that you can throw at me real quick as a test?
How would I take how would I take a monster and put it into a playing card?
A playing card? You
Yeah,
mean
just
like
put it into an object, vessel, whatever.
Like capture a creature and put
Yeah.
it into something?
Yeah.
Any system that does that already. Technically, you can just capture something in a large cylinder. Like you can create an earth cylinder around something and it can be captured in that. But if you mean like capture something as its being and soul into something else, aside from later tiers of magic, like dimensional magic, no, that's not possible in the game system. Dimensional magic can do that, though. The intent of stuff like dimensional magic is creating pocket dimensions. You create a pocket dimension tied to an item, make it so that on using that item, it can capture a creature. It takes it into the dimension, and it just requires an attack roll. But that's a stage 3 system. For reference, my game is only developed at stage 1 so far, so effectively stage 3 would be things like tier 10 and above, basically. So once I get to that point, dimensional magic will start existing, because that's going to be a skill tree unlockable at that stage. And yeah, that will be doable then.
I'm curious, like at what point you're at right now, because you seem very far along.
I just have a roadmap I can show, but
that would be cool.
Simple. I will do that.
It's okay. Because if you have I think if you had made some cheat sheets or like a quick start guide, you know, something for this game, I think it would really pop off.
Yeah, I mean that's the intent with 1.0. But you can see here, this is my current roadmap as it stands. I am about 2/3 of the way down to 0.8. Hence
I'm not seeing it currently. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can't display this on the screen easily because Discord is funky with displaying things, and I don't want to dox anybody accidentally in any way, shape, or form.
Well, we appreciate that.
Yeah, this is basically
Whoa.
the system.
You're so organized.
Basically, the rest of 0.8's development is just developing out the mental system, and then after that, 0.9 will be ready to go, and then from 0.9 to 1.0, it is the races system and the character creation element. That's it. So I have effectively 2 major systems to complete before I'm done.
And then at that point, you would work on the more player-facing, or like onboarding stuff.
Creation document, DM document, monster manual, things like that. Because right now there's no monster manual for my game because everything is constantly shifting and changing, so I can't exactly just make a monster manual.
So now that we have a bit of context, would you prefer to talk about more specific parts of the system, or because you know, since your game is setting agnostic, I mean, there isn't really much to talk about there. We could also skip to the business marketing section. It's your call.
No, I mean, I would love if you guys asked me questions about the individual systems, like martial mental magic. If you had questions about them, or you just want to hear how they work overall. Alternatively, if you want to hear about the equipment systems, if you want to hear about the races, if you want to hear about the generics, I don't know, whatever else, the trade profession system I alluded to earlier, anything like that, just hit me with something.
Death is, I think, the person here, for to ask about the crunchy system. Well, how long would you say a character creation takes? I'm really curious about that.
If you're brand new to the game and I need to walk you through everything, like 30 minutes to an hour. If you're not new to the game, less than 5 minutes.
Okay, that's cool.
And that's for any level of character. Like I showed you earlier, putting those stats in, setting those skills, and then putting in that weapon. That was the character done. There's nothing else that needs to be done aside from that, except for armor, which is the same amount of effort as putting in 3 little drop downs.
And how do you go about like running or playing this? Like, what VTT are you using, or you're using Theater of the Mind?
I've been using Theater of the Mind mixed with various drawing tools, and or sometimes I use Tailspire to do battle maps. But that's kind of what I do for now, just because like.
Yeah. Of course.
That's what I've been doing for now because like there's just been a lot to do for development, and I can't just put this into the VTT or anything like that easily. Like I could do Foundry, but Foundry requires me having a system that's actually developed, so I need to get to that point first.
Yeah, you're almost done setting the foundation for a lot of other things.
Exactly. That's why I said once 1.0 is done, I'll actually be able to work on a lot of these things because I will be in a confident place of like, okay, my core systems are now complete. I can actually make the game in other places and do other things with it,
Yeah. Death, let's go back to the slides and we'll go from there. That's a great question.
So you could just pick one of the systems in my game, martial, mental, magic, generic, equipment, anything like that, and I can go over it, objects, whatever.
I'm trying to... Can you share your screen again then, so we can have that as reference?
Back to sharing my screen real quick so you can get an idea of everything. So you can see there's a quick links thing here. Obviously, we went over the character sheet again already. The rest of these are already things that exist, ones that are blue. And on the left, I can also go through any of those tabs as well.
Okay. I'm curious. Yeah, well, let's talk about attack and damage types. I'm curious about that.
Okay. So this is actually a relatively short system, but to give you the explanation, the attacks types are melee, ranged, area, and target. And melee is pretty self-explanatory. Something in melee. The melee range increasing or decreasing with your character size. Ranged is something that is a visible projectile or a sensible projectile that is going at somebody. Could be a firebolt, could be an arrow, could be my fist being detached from my body and being thrown at you, whatever. Area attacks are attacks that hit an entire area. How they play out is I make an attack roll that is counted as an area attack. Everyone in that area makes a defense roll against that singular attack roll. So if I roll really poorly in my attack roll, I will miss everybody most likely. But if I roll really well, I might hit and or crit people, depending on the roll. And, I should briefly explain. In my system, because the attack rolls and dice roll, defense rolls vary in die size, in order to crit somebody, on attack, when you attack somebody, your die result needs to be twice or more that of the opponent's defense roll. So
okay.
If you roll a d30 and your opponent rolls, say, 2d10, let's say they get the absolute minimum, you roll a 2. It means if you roll a 4 or higher on your d30, you crit them.
I like that. It's intuitive. And that's double damage?
Double damage, double modifier. Other things get doubled situationally, but generally speaking, it's just like mainly damage. Damage modifier, I should say, because damage has some modifier systems. But the final attack type I should specify is targeted. Targeted attack types are ones that the thing just occurs on the person. It doesn't. There's no visible component to it or sensible component. The often example of this is magic. Now, technically speaking, the magic isn't just appearing on them. You're sending a effectively undetectable part of your spirit out to them to then affect them. Now, in system, targeted attacks are normally made from stealth, but if you have a way of sensing the targeted attack, say for example with magic, if you have some kind of magical sense capability and someone's trying to hit you with like a sleep spell that directly targets you or something, if you have the ability to sense that, it's not made as stealth against you because you can sense it still. But to everyone else, it's from stealth, and stealth in this game is advantage on the attack roll, disadvantage on the defense roll. So it's a pretty big swing to attack from stealth. As a result, targeted attacks are usually refined or restricted to just magic and mental, and usually require sacrificing damage or effects to get that thing. So they're usually weaker than everything else. And that's the attack types. As for the damage types, I went for a more realistic set of damage types because while I could go with the breadth of damage types that some systems do, I find that the easiest way to generically cover them all is to just cover what exists in real life as damage. So piercing, crushing, slashing for physical. For elemental, heat, cold, acid, radiation. And then for magic, arcane, which is basically just, you can think of it almost as deatomization in terms of the damage actually doing something to someone. It's not like it burns them or something, it literally takes away their essence.
It's like withering.
Effectively, yeah.
Cool. I like the categories you have. How often do these damage types come up and like make an impact?
As often as anything else. Every archetype can do all of these damage types, including martials being able to do arcane damage if they use specific weapon materials, like mystical weapon materials they can do arcane damage with. Elemental damage is common, physical damage is common. There's no uncommonality about any of these. Arcane is probably the least common, and that's just because there's not a lot of applications for arcane, because arcane is basically an anti-magic thing, since it targets spirits, so it's weaker against everything else, as in it does half damage to anything that is not strictly magical, so a person would only take half damage from arcane. As a result, arcane is not as widespread, but it is still, like, accessible at the same rates as the others.
Okay, I keep thinking about, like, earlier you mentioned, sorry, I'm kind of, I lost my train of thought. There was I'm really curious. Oh, right, you mentioned that there was like the kind of set outcomes, right, where you can kind of fill in the blank. Do you have that somewhere? I'd be interested in seeing that. Like on a roll, like you said, like, oh, if you're foraging or something, or if you're hunting. Or,
oh, yeah, that's just the trade document. I can go over the gather document. Now, I don't have all the production documents completed, but these are the gather documents. These are literally mining, hunting, and botany. So if you go out to mine, this is the general mining table. You roll on this table at D100, and you get a result. There's also metal mining and a gem mining. There's also kind of a skill in it that you can increase by performing it, not by spending skill points. And each of these allows you to do certain things. And there's also a metal mining one and a gem mining. Hunting has its own tables for like when you collect from common, uncommon, or rare creatures, and what you can get from them, including material types. And then the tracking tables for different biome types. Lush being something where animals and creatures are extremely common, fertile being they're somewhat common, and extreme meaning they're not common.
So I'm very curious, like, because all of the things you're showing me together, like, I'm getting a picture of some like MMO or some other thing where a bunch of things are being generated. Yeah, how would you define, like, I feel like this is like blending the line of what a TTRPG is.
Well, that's the thing, is I talk about this infrequently every now and then with different creators and content creators and server owners on Discord. The concept of a living world. Do you know what a living world is?
Yes. It's like a huge West Marches game, essentially, right?
Sure. You can kind of see it as that. The real specific detail of it is a West March is a thing where it's play by post. You don't need a ton of DMs, you don't need a ton of rules, you just play whenever a game is posted, and those games are within the same world, roughly. A living world is the other side of the spectrum. A living world is as close to an MMO as you could possibly get without literally being an MMO in terms of being a video game. But the biggest living world servers on Discord play like MMOs. You have a character, it can perform actions in a day based on time. You can go on quests, you can go trading, you can do gathering quests, hunting, you can do talking with people, you can do trading. All of these things exist within those living worlds, and normally, when you're working with something like 5e, this takes multiple years to develop out. The example I always give is D&D World, the largest living world server on this server, 25,000 members who I've worked with in the past. They've been around for 8 years. Most of their systems have been worked on for that amount of time. They didn't start off with 20,000 members. They started off with like a couple hundred members when I met them. And since then, the only reason they've grown is one, consistency, and two, the amount of breadth of systems they have for 5e. But the problem was, those systems didn't exist within 5e. They had to make them all themselves. These systems had to be made in 5e to work. And you oftentimes had to break 5e to do this, because 5e sucks for a lot of its greater trade profession kind of stuff.
So would you say that's your goal, is to make a living world?
With these systems here, yes. Obviously, 1.0 is an entire topic. These are not going to be completely done in 1.0. These are going to be fleshed out more as 2.0, and then I'll make a living world once I get to that point, because that's going to be more available. 2.0 will be when all of Stage 2 is done, everything from Tier 6 to 10, as well as use trade professions and production documents, which I can actually show you the production documents as well. The intent for the production system.
Sure.
It is going to have more fleshing out from what it's shown, so this is not all direct. But you'll note there's a ton of things on the left. The only ones that are actually completed is engineering, which allows you to tinker with things. Explosives, which allows you to build customized explosives that can trigger and detonate on various things that have higher complexities, which require better rolls over time. And that's it for now. Obviously, eventually there's going to be more, but these systems were the ones I made baseline because an explosive system kind of needs to exist for some other systems. So I needed to make this first.
Have you ever had a theater kid at your table? And if so, how did that go?
I feel like that's more than 50% of my characters, or players, so yes.
Okay. I'm just curious, because, I guess with the streamlining, it's not, it's not a big hurdle,
No, like
for
a lot of
gameplay.
this stuff is, I will tell you this with certainty. My wife, who has never played a TTRPG before, was able to play this system with ease. I took her about 20 minutes to set up her character sheet, and then after that, she kind of, she gets a little confused on what to roll every now and then, because she's not as hyper-focused on things, in terms of, knowing how the systems in Discord for rolling work, because we use Discord to do our rolls. But she knows what she's doing with her character, and she knows how the damage works, she knows how the attacks work. It's not overly complex enough for her to not understand. She's played some RPGs before, but she's relatively new to them. And so if someone like her can get into a game like this, that means that it's pretty open. And I mean, I've had thousands of players in the past, so I can tell you with certainty that this system, while it may look daunting document-wise, if you actually sit down with me, or if I make a creation document and show you the process, it's not hard. All of this is extra crunch on top of a very creamy system.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that, a game designer, would appreciate,
Exactly. That's what I'm making this for, is for game designers and DMs to be able to go, oh, I don't need to create my entire own rules for this? That's great.
Yeah, I just feel like you're leaning very heavily on the game part, right? Or the playing game. But I guess it is setting agnostic, right? So the role playing, you're kind of hoping that the game master carries that part.
Yeah, I mean, effectively, yeah, but I am going to make setting modules for this eventually. That's actually the first thing I'm going to do after 1.0, aside from doing website primary stuff, creating my own setting, which I've been running my games in, as a module that can just be tacked into this. And then my goal after that is I have been actively commissioned by the large Transformers Universal community, whatever the heck their name is in Discord. Transformers Universal, whatever, the big Transformers Discord, to make a Transformers TTRPG using my system. So that's one thing I do. And the second thing I do is I a guy who works with Rob Comics as one of his head admins on his server asked me to do the same thing with a Marvel universe. So eventually I'll do that. And I have other plans to expand this out into other IPs, making them more IP agnostic, because I can't just do Pokemon, because, you know, Nintendo will come literally kill me. So,
come for your family. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So I can do things as long as they aren't, like, super focused, but that's the plan, is that I'm just going to slowly make out actual settings for people to work and play in. And people can make their own settings, and I'll have a guide to how to make a setting for them. And that it won't necessarily be hard. I'll just basically be like, what are the systems you have from your setting? How do they interact? And here's how you can do this. That kind of thing.
Wow, that's you're talking like very big picture, and I love it. Do we want to? Death. I don't know what to do, because we're not on the. You've broken the format.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. No, thank you. I like what I'm seeing.
I was just flipping the right to be like, at any point, my dude, you could have been like, well, let's go back to the tabletop.
I tried once.
I mean, hey.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that everyone's been good with them. So, I was quiet the entire time. You got to be there. Our guest got to just talk all the time he wanted about it being.
Yeah, there's,
Still plenty more.
dude. It seems like it. Your game is four-dimensional. Yeah, I wanna get to the business marketing stuff, and then we can go to the conclusion. And then you can plug anything you like at that.
You can pull back up the thing, and I'll do this here.
Yes, because you've mentioned multiple parts of the show what your plan is, right? But yeah, so we can go.
To give you some context as to what I'm doing, I am a solo developer for the most part. I say I have a co-developer. He mainly is someone I help bounce ideas off of, and who helps playtest a lot of my games. He's consistent in that, and he's been helping me for about 5 years, but he does not develop any of these things himself. He does not code the sheet, he does not write any of these documents. That is all me. He basically is, whenever I have a thing written in a document, I bring it to him and I, what do you think of this? And he goes, ah, that's cool, or ah, that sucks, and then he gives me reasonings behind it. He basically is the first person that play tests the system, and then helps me actually figure it out. And he knows my system pretty well, so he's good at it. And then I actually run it through play testers, and then we run it into the game, and then we go from there. So, from a development perspective, everything is really slow, because this is a massive system with a lot of interlacing systems within it, meaning every time I develop something, I have to think, well, how does this fit into the greater scheme? How does this balance? Is this going to be broken? Is there a way to make this broken? Can I do a repeating effect with this that causes the end of the world? It's the same way you would design any larger game, is that you have to consider, when you're designing something, everything else that interacts with it, how does it interact with that singular thing you just designed? And there's a whole process to it. That's why it's taken me 6 years to get to this point, because I've effectively been at different iterations of my game. Iteration 1, way back when, was there was no documentation, everything was literally written on a piece of napkin paper at my college, and I had a very, very broad stat system that had nothing compared to what it is today. Iteration 2 took that, put it into paper, but it maintained a D20 system. And it maintained a lot of other core systems similar to stuff like D&D. Iteration 3 was me going, okay, I can't do this clearly if I want my system to scale infinitely, which is something it does. So I scrapped that and built what I currently have, where everything is scaling infinitely, and it never breaks anything, because the way everything scales is either infinitely or based within a linear infinite parameter, which is confusing to say, but basically, like, your movement speed is capped at 50 feet. But as your stats scale up, your movement speed can jitter between 50 and lower based on how much dexterity you actually have.
Yeah,
That's like the development process behind all this. And so, keep that in mind when I say, I don't have an end date for 1.0. I don't know when that's going to happen, because I've been developing out 0.8 as it is for about just under 7 months. And I just finished Magic about 2 weeks ago. So, It's taken me about 3 months per, and Mental is the one that I had the least playtesting with prior because it's the newest system. So that one's probably going to take me a while, but eventually when that's done, I do the races document for that, get my races built in with all my skill trees for that. I then start creating a character creation document, maybe some additional supplemental material, and then I go to my own Discord servers I own, some fellow Discord servers I work in or am part of, and I literally just go, my game is ready. In its complete state. I advertise on Reddit, advertise on Twitter, I plan on, at that time, making a bunch of YouTube videos going over various topics within my game, breaking them down and how they work and how they can connect with other systems. Also breaking down, because my character creation document will have these called presets, or preset backgrounds, basically giving you a character that you can just play with some basic information, and the information following that will basically be like how you can expand this character further. And I'll make a YouTube video about each of those to kind of give you an idea visually of how it plays out for people who are more visual or auditory learners. And from there, it'll basically be looking for other DMs, getting more playtesters in, having more games run in my system, running my system through other places, and attempting to get as much feedback as I can. Because basically the first few months to a year are just going to be me getting feedback and altering and tweaking things until I feel confident with my 1.0 being what it is. And then, website, Foundry, VTTs, all that will come after that, once I'm confident with the system. And from there, everything else comes up.
Sounds like a really solid plan.
Oh, and I should mention, part of the going public thing of 1.0 will also be setting up a Kickstarter, which will basically just be me going, hey, I want to develop things like a website, I want to develop things like more robust systems for VTTs, which require money. I want to actually hire artists for my game to make art, because my game is currently just Google Documents, so it doesn't have art.
Yeah.
And to do that, I need money, and I'll basically be asking people to cover those payments for me, because I don't have that money, and the community who are interested in my game can do that. Basically, and that may sound a little mean, but that's
no, that's how most games are funded. Like, it's completely normal, and art is a huge part of the budget as well as marketing, which we will get into shortly. So now we've heard your plan, broadly speaking. Now we're gonna ask more specific questions related to that. So Death, can you go to the next one, please? Cool. Business strategy. Yes, you're talking about this. I'm just gonna roll, and we'll just see how it goes. And you've already answered parts of some of these, but we're gonna do it anyway. 6. Yeah, how do you plan to make money? Like you mentioned, like community, Kickstarter. Are you gonna? How would you build up to a Kickstarter? Yeah, that it's successful.
Well, basically, the actual launch of me releasing this game will come with the Kickstarter being like, hey, the game is fully playable, it's free to play, it's open source. The Kickstarter is here so you can help me make a website so this game is easier to play, so you can help me get art for that website, and so you can help me actually pay for the server hosting for the website and any VTTs I might add to. That's it. I don't plan to make any money aside from that. Outside of that, like I said really early on, with the website, I might add some kind of tier system in it that you can purchase to unlock access to new things. The purpose of that money is primarily to fund the server costs to host a website. Anything extra is icing on the cake, basically. If my game ends up hitting the big market and becoming big and popular, cool, I'll make a lot of money off of that, but that's not my intent.
And where does the living world you mentioned come in? Like what stage, and does that have any?
Much further down the line.
Okay.
A couple of years from now, at least, and a lot of that will just be me developing a living world using the system to see how it functions and hosting it. I've run and made West Marches and living worlds before. I actually pioneered a lot of the early ones and helped develop a lot of the big ones. So I'm probably one of the most experienced when it comes to making and managing them. Therefore, I can make and manage my own. I have actually, like twice, but I'm planning on making my own with flow state as opposed to using scuffed 5e.
And why? Well, I'm curious why you want to do that at a later stage, because I feel like you can make a good amount of money running that too.
The
No.
thing is, it wouldn't be a cost to it; it'd be free. I want that to happen after the website's done, so that people can make character sheets easily, and I can integrate the website with a Discord spot. The living world itself, I want to actually have an established group of people who know how to play the game before I actually host it. If I start with the living world, I need DMs. I don't have any DMs.
So you're going for very like stable. You're focusing on like stability over growth.
Exactly the case.
Okay. No, I mean it's very responsible of you. I'm not as responsible.
Don't worry.
I'm curious how you. Hey, I'm 24. Give me a break. But also, I'm very curious how you're able to like, consistently make progress and like keep yourself motivated throughout all like the years.
Well, for one, it's a passion project. I enjoy developing this because every time I run this game for players, I've had players who dislike this game before, but a good 90 to 95% of the people I played this game hit me with constant happy feedback about how much they love playing the system, how much they either love my setting or just love the crunchiness of the parts of the system. I had a player character just a few months ago get picked up by an opponent, thrown into a car where the whole party was, crashed through the windshield, his leg shattered on impact, and he almost killed the driver on impact as well, which was his friend. Since then, he has retold that tale 4 different times of his own volition in different circles. And that is entirely the mechanics of my system at work.
You are talking about organic marketing, which is great, and getting those anecdotes is very important. I'm gonna roll once or twice, and then we'll move on to marketing. Let's see, 3. Yeah, I mean, I feel like with crunchy games, there's a large amount of investment typically that goes into learning it and onboarding. So I mentioned that because I rolled the 3rd one. What are your competitors doing? How will you compete? So like, who are the
So first and foremost, every single competitor I know of costs money. Simply put. And that's pretty much the biggest point. That obviously my systems and game mechanics and stuff will drive their own reasons to play the game, but the intent of my game was to be an open source project that's meant to break the mold. Because a huge chunk of people in the TTRPG space, they develop their TTRPG, they list it for $10-20, and that's it, they call it a day. My system's intent for being both free and open source is that anyone can use this for any purpose they have. Obviously, they can't just rip it and straight up use it. There's still copyright laws that exist. But the intent is if you want to use these subsystems to use some credit, make some money off of it, cool. And that will inevitably create some kind of break in the entire ecosystem if this continues to be pushed in marketing. So, reality, I don't have any competitors in that specific niche. As far as I'm aware, there is no other free, open source, system agnostic, or setting agnostic systems out there.
Okay. So you're basically saying I'm doing a completely novel thing here, different model that will appeal to people.
I mean, it's suicidal of a model for certain companies to make, because why would they ever release a product and expect no return? So, yeah.
Carson. Yes.
Was he doing something free, open source, system generic, or setting generic as well, or is it only?
Setting generic and like very close to your own thing, like his own rules and everything like that. I haven't spoken to him forever, so like off the top of my head.
Interesting.
I mean, think of.
Like no, like you're like the second person out of like everyone I've heard or spoken to about
This specific setting agnostic, I'm talking about it also being open source, that anyone can use any part of it, which is its own thing, you know?
Maybe we're thinking about Think-A-Man. I don't know what his plans are. Sorry, we're mentioning people that. Yeah.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. But yes, sounds like there are not a lot of competitors directly to what you're doing. Do you think that this is the sort of thing where it's like, okay, I baked this thing, I'm like one of the first people to do that, and you have this like, you're kind of grandfathered in, you have this advantage because you built this foundation before others did. And how do you think the paid alternatives will react? Because maybe what if they're saying, okay, actually we're just going to copy what you're doing now and find some other way to monetize within that.
Cool.
Because then it's a marketing.
They still have to credit it. They still have to credit me, and at the end of the day, if everyone flow state systems, that just means that my systems work and they're good. You know, if the market devolves into D&D becoming flow state, Starfinder and Pathfinder becoming variants of flow state, cool, great, I win. I don't care. I don't even make money off of that.
But now you're the okay. I think marketing is going to be very key to all you're talking about, because, like you mentioned, you can make the best game of all time free, all these cool features. Some people will find it, but it's like there's a certain rate that you need to get reach critical mass, and like you said with art. So we're gonna move on to marketing. Nice segue there. Death, please. Thank you. 5. How out there do you want your message to be, like, about your game? Because you're like the Linux. Are you like the Linux of RPGs?
I mean, no. I want my system to kind of be this. Hey, this is a way to play any setting you want. It's meant to be. You could say that's a Linux, sure, but like Linux in my mind has a huge learning curve to it, where if you don't want to learn programming languages and if you don't want to learn Linux's systems, you can't really use Linux. But once you can use Linux, it becomes a thing that you can use for a lot of things. I like to think of my system as something more like it's not really an example that I can think of in another market, at least not off the top of my head.
Well, I would like
an example would be like Band-Aids or Kleenex, right? Where their name is the brand.
Genericide, yes.
They basically are the thing that everyone else copies because they made the thing so generic, and everyone either makes it better or makes it worse and cheaper.
I want to use a metaphor. I'm curious what you think about about it. So there's the people making like larger games, more kind of structured, right? And maybe those, imagine some like metaphorical space. There's like there's these large grand structures people are looking at, right? And
Yep.
the more open source is like where the more community involved. There's like people like building like smaller things, kind of attached to those. And then there's like little like indie like smaller games kind of floating around, these like very interesting little things. And I feel like you're trying to build like the biggest one with the most ropes, tendrils, whatever you want to call it, to come out.
I mean, effectively, I'm not trying to make the buildings. I'm trying to make the planet that the buildings sit on.
Yeah.
I'm trying to establish, not necessarily a norm for all TTRPGs, because that's insanely ambitious and honestly egotistical. I'm instead trying to establish something that's like, hey, this is a pretty good system that works for crunchy settings. And keep in mind, my game is, I say it's creamy. It's not like fake. It's not like where everything is just made up on the spot. It's still a crunchy system, but it's on the light end of crunchy in terms of player interaction. For DMs, it's a little bit crunchy, and for designers, it's extra crunchy. And that's the part where a lot of people might actually enjoy that. Because for designers, when you're trying to build your own system, if you're given a one-page RPG and told to build a system off that, you just kind of shrug your shoulders and go, you're asking me to just build a system at this point, I can just ignore this document. But if you give someone a super crunchy system and tell them to build a system based on that, it's a lot easier because there's already a lot of existing systems. So on a design perspective, crunchy is better on a strict scale because you can actually do more. Now, granted, there are points where that crunchiness starts to actually become not crunchy anymore and just breaking your teeth hard, in that some of the systems are so obtuse and non-modular and problematic.
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends who you're targeting and like how many brain cells per fun unit that costs.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask the question again. How out there do you want the message of your game or like on the show to be? Like.
So I mean, what do you mean by out there exactly? Do you mean like how far do you want that message to reach, or how weird?
Weird. Weird, yes.
I mean, this is gonna definitely. So here's the thing. Because it's a digital only game, because it's system generic, these things are already out there in their own way. When people think of TTRPG, they don't think of those things. They think of sitting down at a table with a dungeon master, rolling dice, and playing on a sheet. Maybe they might think of digital D&D now, but that's much more new. My system is as out there as you can possibly get in terms of like TTRPG, because it is two things that no one knows of: a system generic thing, or a setting generic thing, which basically no one runs those or makes those. GURPS was one of them way back when, and like no one played that game. It's only popular because it was like the only one of its kind. And the other one being digital only. There's not very many digital only TTRPGs of this scale, and by that I mean I don't think there's any. And by digital only, I don't mean it only exists within space. I mean it actually builds within digital space for its benefit, like things like modular die size or automated sheets.
Okay, so you're basically making a like. It's you're saying that in those two like avenues, like you're standing out, right? Like setting agnostic as well as the other one you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, as a result of being setting agnostic, it is going to be both out there and very much up people's alleys at the same time. Because it's out there in that no one's heard of this kind of thing before, but the moment they understand what it is, they're like, oh, I could use that. I have a setting I wanted to play, but there's no system core, no good system core. Let me see if it works. Try it.
Okay, I want you to imagine like a front website, a cover, some promo thing for your game, right? What does that look like?
It would basically just say, play flow state in any setting. Some combination that I know marketing pretty well, but I'm coming off the top of my head. It'd be like, the system that works everywhere would basically be like a tagline. And it would just show like the background being like a dude deflecting giant laser fire from a spaceship with a shield. On the left, it would be like a series of like adventurers traveling into a town that a giant demon is causing chaos in. At the bottom right, it'd be a bunch of merchants gathering in a town square, and the player character person in front appraising an item that's super shiny. And the bottom left one would be like a bunch of Neolithic dudes with spears just stabbing each other in a gladiatorial arena. Something like that.
Okay, I can see that.
Basically, that would be the concept, is if you can think of a setting, this system can probably work in it in most cases. And again, there are going to be settings where it doesn't work, and those are mostly anime, because I have had people come to me like, hey, does this anime work in your setting? Or in your system? Not really, because anime usually have incredibly strict rules on how their system, to the point where it actually becomes pretty nonsensical if you actually think about it. An example of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I don't think JoJo's works in my set system because I don't even think the designer of JoJo's knows how it works.
Yeah, I've actually played a JoJo's fan RPG, and there's like you can like write like if this happens, then that happens, like as like a bullshit like situational thing. So
exactly, you have to basically make it as a rules light game. And my system is not rules light, so it wouldn't function like that. Basically, you have to make shit up. And
yes.
while you could do that, it's at that point just do something like that, play Fate or something, another system like that, instead of going after my system.
So I rolled 4, so yeah, I'm curious. What's your project's top 5 selling points? I mean, there's some obvious ones, but I'll let you start.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you my 5. Easy to learn, but has a lot of depth to the system from a system point of view. It's setting generic, and you can play it in any setting you want, realistically. It is free and open source, meaning you can actually play the game at any time. Anyone can play it, as long as they have a phone, a computer, a laptop, anything, they can play it and enjoy it. 4 is that it covers as many fantasy tropes as possible that are possible to cover within a system like this. Meaning you can do a lot of things within a fantasy world that you want to do. And 5 would be, I don't know. It has a really cool trade profession system that allows you to do a lot of out-of-combat stuff that you can normally not do in other settings.
You could say like a lot of subsystems that are unique.
A lot of unique subsystems.
Yeah. And I had something like, and then it just vanished, and it was good. Damn. Death. Is there anything you want to throw out there? Okay. I think it's very important that to get people like interested, I think you need to lead by example with a couple of specifics um, like what's your like even if it's setting agnostic, I think you still need to paint some sort of like picture.
I mean, I gave a couple earlier, but
Yeah.
I can just give examples from the campaigns I've run. Of this. Obviously, if you're looking to DM the system, it's a little bit harder to take it and learn because I don't have any of those documents ready. But if you reach out to me, I'd be willing to teach you exactly how to DM the system, so you can indeed run any setting within the system. But the settings I have run, and the amount of times I've actually like run super long campaigns that are super enjoyable has been countless. I've run hundreds of games of this. Like I said earlier, I ran some sci-fi ones. I ran some where players were traveling from planet to planet as mercenaries, attempting to unravel a greater government conspiracy. And the way that the starships worked was they literally were amplified versions of the martial mental magic systems. So effectively, if you were to cast a spell through your ship, it would get amplified by the ship and do 100 times the effect. Which meant that you could have actual ship combat play out like normal combat, except at a much bigger scale, because obviously it is. And this led to a ton of fun combat encounters with ships, where players were fighting ship to ship, trying to use various skills to defend the ship. Like if they're a pilot, they can use movement skills to move around faster on the ship. But outside of that, there's plenty of medieval fantasy games that run, some horror settings that run, players have had. I'm like struggling to think of things because it's just anything that can be thought of. You know what we can do? Go back to what I said earlier about you give me something that you want to be, if it's doable in the system, and I tell you how it exactly is done. That way people can kind of get an idea of like, oh, if that's doable, then surely this other thing is too.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think like because again, so the reason why people don't like an issue that some people have with D&D is like that like there are systems that can do more specific things better, right? So I guess how would you demonstrate that for your game system? Like what are those things?
My system allows you to be more creative. It allows you to do more things.
Okay, and so I think that you might want to think about like who that appeals to, and I don't think it's people who are new to RPGs. I think it's people.
So, I will say I have actually considered this and actually planned for it. So, the people who like my RPG are the ones who be creative. Blankly put. If you have a lot of character designs you have that you wanted to run D&D forever, but you struggle to because of lack of content in D&D, lack of systems in D&D, but they're generic fantasy ideas, like maybe you watch a show that had a cool fantasy necromancer and you want to play that fantasy necromancer. My system is right there ready for the taking. You can do that. And that's the thing that I believe is going to draw up people like you. If you are a person who is generally more focused on the now, the moment, if you have things like attention disorders where you have a hard time actually creating these elaborate things or focusing on these elaborate things and instead want to focus moment to moment, it's going to be harder to play my game without your hand being held. And that is just DNA truth. But for everybody else that actually has pre-made or developed characters or has ideas, even if they've never played a TTRPG before, they're like, oh yeah, I've always wanted to be a pyromancer. My system has the ability to do that in spades. And there's ways to make it cool, there's ways to flavor it better, there's ways to increase the amount of stuff you can do with it. All of that is within my system. And while yes, this does exclude some people from playing the game, people who specifically are more focused on being given a character rather than playing and making a character, it's just a difference in target audience.
I mean, you'll still have pre-gens, right? You'll still have those things to help to ease players in, right? Okay. Let's go to the conclusion then. I was really trying to not. You know what you're making better than anyone else. That's the nature of it. This is like obviously what you're making seems a lot more crunchy than like it would be in gameplay at the table. I guess you seem to have a direction that you're set on, and I think it's a good idea. I just am not. I'm not. I'm more of the table player, and I don't know. I've played some crunchy games, but I think like you're trying to build something so stable that you are competing against like the abstractness of some of the other games, and I think that you will need to communicate that you can do those abstract things very clearly.
Yep. I mean, I've been doing that with this interview, and I also do that with my system. My plan for this is all just to be like, hey, this is a thing where you can do whatever you want, no matter how niche or abstract that thing is. As a DM, as a player, you can create and do. There are extreme situations where it won't work out, where hyper-specific ideas don't work, but as a rule of thumb, 90% of things people will come up with are doable within the system, and that is significantly better than anything else in the market. With D&D being like, oh well, in order to do that, you need to either make your own thing, or you need to basically not play a good character that actually is like strong in the game. That's another thing, is like a lot of other systems, they're like, oh yeah, you can do anything, but not everything is good to do. So then you can't do anything if you actually want to play a fun game, or play a game where you actually have a good character. And within my system, I try to make everything as balanced as possible, as fun as possible, as interesting as possible, while maintaining that rough balance, so that no matter what kind of character you end up designing, unless you just design a character with absolutely no thought, like putting skill points into mental with having no mental stats, obviously just building a character poorly. But as long as you don't do that, your character will play at the same level as everybody else, with the same, not literal same amount of content and power, but around equivalent, so that you'll never feel underpowered. You'll have your moments to shine, and other people will have their moments to shine. And like, I guess that's what I really am saying with my game. Is like, I've successfully, in the sense that this game has been running for a while now, and people have enjoyed it in the thousands. I've successfully run this game and made this game to be something where a large number of people will actually be able to sit down and create a character that they like, and enjoy that character in the context of the world, whatever world that may be.
I mean, and that's a very admirable goal. I just hope you're right about people having the attention spans and like the getting through that initial investment to stick with it. I hope you're right about that. Death, is there anything you want to say in the conclusion here? And
One, sorry that I dropped off in the second half.
it's totally cool.
I was just listening and taking notes and I love that you are trying to like let anyone do their own fantasy and stuff, and I get that's the point of a generic system, but that repels me on a physical level.
I'm sure, yeah. It's because it means that there's so much things that can happen that are... I mean, is it something like it's a complexity thing to you?
Well,
paralysis, or is it something else?
How I see it is you're doing...
It's very focused on being a fantasy game, and just the fact that you are not picking like a genre is bugging me, because it feels overwhelming to just be like, cool, I can be anywhere. It's not choice paralysis, because I will just pick some games from there. It just doesn't feel right that there is no set start point for your game.
I mean, I guess that you could say the setting is, the basic setting is a fantasy setting, but that's pretty generic.
Well,
fantasy could be anything,
I think we're like cavemen looking at some like flying, some flying drone, because I've never seen a game that is both setting agnostic and extremely crunchy. I've only seen like those separate, and I didn't realize.
I don't count it as crunchy, but
Well,
I know what you mean.
I think the metaphor is like, because I think why this like instinct, the hesitancy is because like people for like tabletop role games, they tend to want to make something very niche and like get like a tight like community, right? Like capture a niche, right? or create their own niche, and you are casting the biggest, widest net possible.
And I can actually add another point that a couple of my players every now and then bring up. That's like, people when they hear about my system without actually playing it, they think to themselves, "Oh wow, so if I want to make my own thing, I have to use someone else's system to do it. Like if I want to be a necromancer, I have to fit into the mold of a necromancer." And the thing is, people are averse to that because they don't think that that's something that's good. They think that that's something that's like, oh, that's negative. When in reality, the alternative is they just don't get to play that thing because other systems just don't have the availability, or they have completely different ways to play it. At the very least, my system offers it, and yes, there are mechanical systems for how it works, so there is going to be something different than your idealized version every time. But that the intent of that is not to be like, oh, well, you're the way you're doing it sucks, the way I'm doing it is better. No, it's more like, I'm giving you the tools to do it in the first place. Whether or not it's not 100% of your idea or not, it's still doable,
Yeah. By the way, I think that you should. My personal advice is that you should target hopefully someone in your community can generously build pre-gens that are popular tropes, and as I just think those. You need the hook, right? It's like you have all these ropes. I just think you need some hooks in more specific directions.
I agree. My co-developer and I both have come up with a large amount of them. Plus, I have, like I said, a couple hundred playtesters from past and present that I can ask about things, and I'll be able to come up with a pretty big list. I don't want to make a list that is so big that it blots out the sun, but
yeah, Yeah, dude, I think what you're doing is several pay grades above what most people are doing in the RPG scene, and I commend you for that. It's hard to envision, and I would love to see some gameplay.
I mean, obviously outside of this interview, I'd love to show you guys around the game sometime. Either have you join us playtest or just observe some playtest sessions to see how the game plays, because it is. I wouldn't say it's a work of art because that's, again, very egotistical, but it's certainly interesting to watch.
You could say it. RPGs are art. It's an art form.
Sure, but it's a work of art because when you watch people play the game, there's so much actual strategy to every turn. When other RPGs just lack that. Even the ones that tout themselves as being strategy focused, you rarely hear people talk about the strategy. They just go, well, my strategy is an option to do this or this. When in reality, it's like, okay, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to grapple him. And then once I have him grappled and knocked down, you guys can focus on the back line. In order to do that, have the support hold his actions so that he can defend his allies. And then while that happens, this guy is going to come around back and take out this guy. That actual strategy does happen and is almost necessary to certain parts of the game because of the difficulty being there. Like I said before, way back when with the health system, taking hits in fights is not good, so having a strategy, having a system to your combat is needed almost in terms of playing at best levels. Obviously, when you're playing in a more casual campaign, you can worry about that, but the way I run my campaigns, I was you guys need to strategize about what you're doing.
Well, I think for marketing and just what the message is, I think that strategy could be a big part of that. And I think honestly, dude, if your game is free and there is a lot of strategical components, I think you could maybe grab some more gamers as well. Also, the fact that you have hundreds of playtesters, playtesting is very important. That's very impressive that you've been able to build that up.
Yeah. I mean, my active playtester server only sits around 40 members at the moment, but prior to that, I've had hundreds of thousands of playtesters filtered through my game, playing in various capacities, and I've gotten dozens of campaigns worth of feedback and criticism and positive notes. I've had some people come at my game this is the worst system I've ever played. I've had some other people come at my game oh my god, I only play this system now.
Yeah.
I have had two people who come at my system gone, this is incredible, I'm going to make my own system based off this, and now they're doing that. So there's two baby flow states out there currently being developed,
What?
It just happens.
Okay, Chris and Optimistical, thank you so much for coming on to RPGeez. let's do some shameless plugs. Anything you would like to plug, Dev, please.
Sure.
Uh,
I don't know how I would. I mean, I guess it's going to be in the description of the YouTube video and or whatever. But my own server, Tableside Gaming, which you can find by its name, Tableside Space Gaming on Discord, is a generic RPG, a TTRPG server in which people can come and find various games of various types. Generally, TTRPGs like D&D, Pathfinder, etc. are played there, but I've seen many people play a lot of other things. It's also a place where you can just chat about various RPG topics, and there's even some real-life topics that occasionally get talked about, as a lot of stuff has to do with everything within politics, occasionally has to do with TTRPGs, and we actually encourage that kind of talk on the server so that people can actually discuss things. But beyond that, my flow state playtest stuff. If you want to join in on flow state playtesting for any purpose, either reach out to me, or once things go public, you can find the server as it will be called Flow State via server discovery. If you want to reach out to me on Discord, username is Chris/Optimistical, all lowercase. Optimistical is OPTYMYSTICAL. Chris is just CHRIS. And beyond that, that's basically it.
Awesome. Well,